The morning sun beat down on Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso's capital, casting long shadows over the modest presidential office where Ibrahim Traoré sat reviewing mining contract proposals. Unlike the opulent palaces of other nations, Traoré's workspace was simple and functional, a reflection of his military background and no-nonsense leadership style. His focus shifted only when a soft knock interrupted the quiet. Chief of Staff Amara Dio entered with an expression that immediately set off alarm bells in Traoré's mind. "Mr. President," she said, her voice tense, "there's a situation requiring your immediate attention." She handed him a sealed envelope. No official markings, no return address, just his name handwritten in precise block letters. Traoré opened it carefully, revealing a single photograph that made his blood run cold. It was a picture of his mother's house in Kaya, captured from across the street. Beneath the photo lay a chilling note. The new mining regulations would be unfortunate for everyone. Reconsider. Traoré's jaw tightened as he studied the image. There was nothing overtly threatening about the photo itself. It wasn't violent or explicit, but the message was unmistakable. Someone had been watching his family. His mother lived in a modest home in Kaya, refusing to move to the capital despite her son's position. Her independence and deep roots in the community now made her vulnerable. "When was this delivered?" Traoré asked, his voice calm but laced with fury. 20 minutes ago, Dio replied. "The courier was a local teenager paid cash to deliver it. Security is already reviewing street camera footage." Traoré nodded slowly, his mind racing. He knew what this meant. This wasn't just political opposition, it was personal. Whoever sent this wanted him to feel powerless, exposed. But Traoré wasn't one to back down easily. As Traoré processed the gravity of the threat, he realized something even more unsettling. Whoever orchestrated this knew enough about him to strike at his most cherished relationship, his bond with his mother. Later that day, intelligence reports revealed suspicious activity near Kaya. A private security firm called Sentinel Worldwide had recently established operations in the area under the guise of providing security for mining companies. Several employees had British military backgrounds, similar to Richard Thornton, CEO of GlobalEx, the very company standing to lose billions if Traoré's proposed mining regulations passed. Traoré ordered discreet protection for his family but refused to let fear dictate his actions. He gathered his trusted advisors to review dossiers on the mining companies opposing the new regulations. These rules aimed to reshape Burkina Faso's future by increasing royalty payments, mandating local hiring quotas, and enforcing stricter environmental protections. Most significantly, they required renegotiation of contracts signed under previous regimes, contracts that had enriched foreign corporations while leaving little benefit for the Burkina Faso people. GlobalEx stood to lose the most. Finance Minister Ura Ogo pointed out that their profit margins in Burkina Faso were among their highest globally. Intelligence Director Sako added, "Thornton has a reputation for aggressive negotiation tactics. We suspect Sentinel may have ties to him." As the meeting concluded, Traoré felt a cold anger settling in his chest. He had faced coup attempts, assassination plots, and international pressure before, but this was different. This attack targeted not just his leadership, but the heart of who he was, a son trying to protect his family and a leader determined to uplift his nation. Alone in his office later that evening, Traoré received another anonymous message. "Your mother leaves her house every morning at 7 a.m. The screen faded to black as tension built, leaving viewers wondering how far Traoré would go to shield his loved ones, and whether he could withstand the mounting pressure without compromising his principles. The morning after receiving the anonymous message about his mother's routine, Ibrahim Traoré sat in his office, staring at the photograph of her house. His thoughts were heavy with anger and resolve. He couldn't let fear dictate his actions, but he also couldn't ignore the reality of the situation. Someone had deliberately targeted his family to destabilize him, and they were willing to go further if he didn't comply. Traore leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. The weight of leadership pressed down on him, not just as a president, but as a son who refused to compromise his principles or endanger his loved ones. Then, his phone buzzed with an urgent update from Intelligence Director Sako. Fatou Diallo, the junior analyst recruited within GlobalEx, had uncovered something critical, a series of payments linking Sentinel worldwide directly to Thornton's operations. As Traore processed this new information, he realized that the threat wasn't just external. It was deeply embedded in the very system he was trying to reform. Every step forward seemed to reveal another layer of corruption. Later that day, Traore met secretly with Omar, the government liaison communicating with Fatou. Omar handed over encrypted files containing detailed payment records and internal communications between GlobalEx executives and Sentinel operatives. Among them was a chilling directive: maintain surveillance on key targets until further notice. Omar explained, Fatou says there's more. She's noticed irregular meetings involving Richard Thornton and James Kerr, Sentinel's head of operations. They've been discussing contingency plans. Traore clenched his fists, feeling both rage and admiration for Fatou's bravery. This young woman, barely out of university, was risking everything to expose the truth. Her courage reminded him why he fought so hard for his country. But her involvement also put her life at risk. If GlobalEx discovered her role, she wouldn't be safe anywhere. Back in London, Fatou Diallo wrestled with her own fears. Sitting alone in her tiny apartment, she stared at her laptop screen, replaying the events of the past few days. She had managed to download financial projections showing GlobalEx preparing for operational contingencies in Burkina Faso, including complete withdrawal scenarios. It was clear. Thornton knew Traore meant business and was considering drastic measures. Her hands trembled as she sent the latest intel through a secure channel to Omar. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Earlier that evening, while leaving work, she'd noticed a man lingering near the subway entrance, a tall figure with scars on his face. It could have been paranoia, but given everything, she couldn't afford to dismiss it. Meanwhile, in Kaya, Traore visited his mother again under the pretense of a casual family visit. Despite the discreet security detail surrounding her neighborhood, he felt uneasy. His mother sensed his tension immediately. "You're carrying too much, my son," she said gently, pouring tea into small clay cups. "Whatever burden you're facing, remember, you are not alone." Traore smiled faintly, grateful for her wisdom. Still, he avoided sharing the full extent of the danger. Instead, he focused on lighter topics, recounting stories from his childhood that always made her laugh. Yet even as they shared these moments, Traore's mind raced. How far would Thornton push this? And how long could he protect his family without revealing the stakes? As Traore returned to Ouagadougou, he received an encrypted message from Omar. "Sentinel is escalating. We believe they plan to move within 48 hours. Fatou has intercepted documents suggesting direct intervention in your administration." The screen faded to black, leaving viewers wondering what form this intervention would take, and whether Traore could counter it before it was too late. The elegant charity gala at the British Embassy in Paris was winding down, but Richard Thornton wasn't celebrating. He stood by the bar, nursing a glass of whiskey, his mind racing through the implications of the call with Ibrahim Traoré. For the first time in his career, he felt like a cornered animal. Traore's evidence, though circumstantial, was damning, enough to spark investigations that could cripple GlobalEx globally. Worse still, Traore had made it clear that any delay in compliance would result in public exposure and legal action. Thornton excused himself from a group of investors and stepped outside onto the embassy balcony. The cool night air did little to calm him. His phone buzzed incessantly with updates from London. Fatou Diallo, the junior analyst whose reports had tipped off Traore, had been quietly preparing financial projections for operational contingencies, including complete withdrawal scenarios. This signaled to Thornton that Traore wasn't bluffing. He was ready to escalate. As Thornton processed the gravity of the situation, he realized something even more unsettling. Traore wasn't just fighting for regulations. He was redefining how African nations interacted with global corporations. And if other leaders followed suit, it could upend decades of corporate dominance. Back in Burkina Faso, Intelligence Director Sako intercepted a flurry of communications between Sentinel operatives and GlobalEx executives. The messages revealed panic within their ranks. James Kerr, head of Sentinel operations, had already begun pulling personnel out of Kaya, fearing arrest. But there was one alarming detail. Kerr mentioned backup plans involving local intermediaries who could continue covert activities without being traced back to GlobalEx. It became clear that while Traore had won this round, the battle was far from over. Meanwhile, Traore addressed his cabinet, briefing them on the outcome of the call. GlobalEx is withdrawing Sentinel immediately, he announced, his tone measured yet firm. But we must remain vigilant. Corporations like GlobalEx don't retreat. They regroup. We need stronger oversight mechanisms to ensure they can't exploit loopholes. Finance Minister Ogo nodded thoughtfully. We should also consider revising our laws to impose stricter penalties for foreign interference. What happened here can't happen again. Traore agreed, but his thoughts drifted to Fatou Diallo. Without her courage, none of this would have been possible. She had risked everything, not just her career but her life, to expose the truth. That evening, Traore sent an encrypted message of gratitude through Omar. Fatou's response came quickly. Thank you, Mr. President, but I fear retaliation. If they discover my role, I won't be safe anywhere. As Traore read her words, his phone vibrated with another urgent alert from Sako. Intelligence suggested that GlobalEx had initiated discussions with shadowy intermediaries in neighboring countries. Their goal: to destabilize Burkina Faso economically and politically. Traore stared at the screen, realizing that winning the war against corporate greed required more than bold policies. It demanded constant vigilance. Would victory truly belong to the people of Burkina Faso, or was this merely the beginning of a much larger struggle? The sun rose over Burkina Faso, casting a golden glow across the landscape as Ibrahim Traoré stood at the edge of a construction site in a small village near one of GlobalEx's largest former mining operations. Before him lay the foundation of a new school, the first of many planned under his administration's ambitious initiative to train Burkinabe citizens in advanced mining operations. On a ceremonial brick placed at the cornerstone, someone had written in bold letters, "Our minerals, our future." The phrase resonated deeply with Traore. It wasn't just a slogan. It was a promise, a declaration that the wealth beneath Burkina Faso's soil would finally serve its people. As he gazed at the words, Traore reflected on the journey that had brought them here. The battle against Richard Thornton and GlobalEx had been intense, personal, and fraught with danger. Yet they had prevailed, not through violence or retaliation, but through intelligence, resolve, and strategic alliances. His victory wasn't just about forcing a powerful corporation to comply with fair regulations. It was about redefining how African nations engaged with global powers. And now, as he looked around at the villagers gathered for the ceremony, children laughing, elders smiling, he felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for what they had achieved together. But even as Traore celebrated this hard-won triumph, he couldn't shake the lingering awareness that their fight wasn't truly over. Corporations like GlobalEx didn't retreat forever. They regrouped, adapted, and returned with subtler tactics. The question remained, could Burkina Faso sustain this momentum? Back in London, Richard Thornton packed up his office, his once commanding presence diminished by the weight of failure. As he placed a framed photograph of himself shaking hands with world leaders into a cardboard box, his phone buzzed with a news alert. Traore had announced yet another initiative: partnerships with international universities to develop sustainable mining technologies tailored to African conditions. This move aimed not only to reduce reliance on foreign expertise, but also to position Burkina Faso as a leader in ethical resource extraction. Thornton grimaced, realizing that Traore wasn't content with merely winning. He was determined to reshape the playing field entirely. For decades, corporations like GlobalEx had thrived on exploiting weak governance and outdated systems. Now, Traore was dismantling those structures piece by piece, replacing them with policies that prioritized local empowerment and environmental stewardship. Worse still, other African leaders were taking notice. In private meetings across the continent, ministers discussed adopting similar frameworks, inspired by Burkina Faso's success. Meanwhile, Fatou Diallo sat nervously in a cafe in London, her eyes scanning the room as she waited for Omar. She had risked everything to expose GlobalEx's involvement, and though the immediate threat had passed, she knew her role hadn't gone unnoticed. A few days earlier, she'd received a cryptic message from an unknown number. "Your loyalty is noted." It wasn't signed, but the implication was clear. Someone within GlobalEx suspected her betrayal. Despite the fear gnawing at her, Fatou refused to back down. Her actions had helped protect Traore's family and secured justice for her nation. That knowledge gave her strength. When Omar arrived, he handed her a small envelope containing travel documents and instructions. "You've done more than anyone could have asked," he said quietly. "But it's time for you to leave London. We've arranged safe passage home." Fatou nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "Tell President Traore, I'm proud of what we've accomplished." As Fatou boarded a flight bound for Ouagadougou later that evening, Traore received an encrypted report detailing increased lobbying efforts by multinational corporations targeting neighboring countries. They sought to undermine Burkina Faso's reforms by pressuring weaker governments to maintain exploitative practices. The screen faded to black as Traore leaned back in his chair, contemplating the next phase of his mission. Would Burkina Faso's success inspire others to follow suit, or would corporate interests find ways to divide and conquer? This story is far more than a tale of politics or greed. It's a testament to courage, resilience, and the enduring power of hope. Ibrahim Traoré faced unimaginable pressure, but he never wavered in his commitment to justice. Fatou Diallo risked everything to stand up for what was right. Together, they proved that even the smallest acts of bravery can spark monumental change. Now it's your turn to take action. Like, comment, and share this video to spread the message that ordinary people can achieve extraordinary things when they stand united. Subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories that remind us all of the strength we hold within ourselves, our minerals, our future. Let these words guide us as we continue striving for a better world. Thank you for watching, and remember, change begins with you.